Starting the lineup for the 2023 A Certain Scientific Railgun collaboration with Mikoto Ace, it is TKR00 Mikoto Ace, with the kits of HC Buster, Railgun, Hyper Thunder, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Weapon Master, which converts a percentage of the leg's resist stats into base power when attacking. Now, as the first model of the collab, Mikoto Ace is not only introducing one new skill to the game to be used, but also starting us off on a very good and powerful foot as to what to expect with the rest of the collaboration, with very powerful skills, synergetic kits, and very, very good numbers across the board with the stats that they do indeed offer. HC Buster, or Hypercharge Buster for the full name, is a brand new skill being introduced to the game, which, simply explained, is more or less like Hypercharge Blade that we got with the Gridman Universe collab with full power grid. But, to explain it for sake of numbers, upon attacking the target, it will convert up to 300% of your current used Metaforce charge as bonus damage when attacking. At the cost, of course, that much like Charge Blade, that it consumes a small amount, Hypercharge Blade will consume 30% charge upon use, or 15 if it's fully capped, which means that for the extra bonus that you will be dealing, it will also be notably more expensive to do so. Railgun on the right arm, and of course very iconic and incredibly fitting for the character that it is based off of, is a conventional shooting skill that basically is just the shooting version of Pile, which Railgun as well we have not seen too terribly often and fairly recent, if I'm being honest. And on top of that, we also only had it on collab models, if I do recall correctly. The last recent instance of this was on Unit 0 from the EVA collab. But, as explained, it is a conventional shooting skill, which means there is no drawback or penalty to using it in your cooldown. And in addition to this, when capped at 5-star, it is also packing passive defense ignore and passive pierce damage, which means that for this very powerful skill you can make use of, you have wonderful damage, great stats, and no real penalties to using it either. So if you need something with a little more oomph than Rifle, but you really want to make sure that you keep your bot protected, look no further than Railgun in this case. Hyper Thunder on the left arm is basically just a more powerful version of Thunder, and we have seen variants of this and Hyper Freeze in the more fairly recent, but explained, it does simply have the same effects and power as basic Thunder, but at the cost it will be dealing more damage, but also deal pierce damage on top of that. At the cost of the extra damage, however, you are also slapped with a no dodge and no defend penalty while in cooldown. So even though you can paralyze the enemy, most certainly exercise some caution when using it so you don't get slapped on the backside the moment you turn your back. The Weapon Master ability honestly synergizes with her kit very, very nicely though, and I will get to this in just a moment too, as a reminder, since it does take a percentage of her leg's resist stats when using each respective attack. And that means if you are using one of her shooting skills, she converts her shoot resist, or her melee skill of Hyper Thunder, the melee resist gets bonus damage. On the topic of stats as well, she is packing some very impressive numbers across the board too, and her only heavy part being HC Buster in this case. When it comes to armor, about 3,500 for the head, about 3,150 for the right, about 3,050 for the left, so about a 100-point difference, and the legs at about 3,750, which means she's packing, despite the relatively light and dainty frame, a pretty solid amount of armor underneath all that power. In addition to that, the leg stats are also incredibly impressive for what they bring to the table as well, even with the fact they can only use they only have one heavy slot. A mobility of 828 is off to a very, very good start, as it means Mikoto Ace will have very good time and a very easy time running across the field before any other modifiers. And being a biped leg means that she has good coverage across almost every terrain that is currently available, with the exception of a small handful. An evade of 1246 is also very nice too, as it means she will have a pretty easy time dodging or grazing low success attacks and keep the damage low. A melee resist of 1222 and a shoot resist of 1316 are both very impressive though, and those tie very much so into her Weapon Master ability, as it means the higher these numbers get, the more powerful of a bonus she unlocks when triggering Weapon Master. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I do very, very easily have to rate Mikoto Ace a very solid 8.5 out of 10. Her kit synergizes very well with itself, even with having just kind of a one-off melee skill in there. Thanks to the ability of overclocking metals, you really don't have to choose anymore about whether to go for shooting or go for melee. But if I'm being honest, you still would want to put the emphasis toward the shooting anyway, given her particular kit. And Weapon Master is able to also comp a percentage of the attack as well, based on the lower level of the Metal Mastery in this case. And of course, as mentioned, very synergetic. Weapon Master fits with basically everything, good numbers across the board, and essentially a model that you can basically use right from start and fresh out of the box, with really no reason, with no need for prep or support to stand behind her. Now granted, HC Buster does require her to have a Metaforce charge to use, but between Hyper Thunder and Railgun, she can honestly comp that on her own with very little difficulty. As mixed parts score, I do very easily, for these same reasons, have to rate her at a 9 out of 10. And I wouldn't necessarily rate her as a 10 out of 10, but I was very, very close to. Primarily for the reason that Railgun and Hyper Thunder, and even HC Buster in this case, are skills that have actually never been seen on female models before. So even starting as fresh out of the gate with this collab, Mikoto Ace is bringing a lot of very powerful skills and a wonderful leg type part too, that we can bring to the table and make use of on female teams to really start shifting that tide, especially when mono female or female only or limited super invasions or modifiers do require us to use them.